Ever felt that the world of STEM was too serious or uncool? Well, get ready to have your perception shattered. This is BlerdOut, and I'm your host, Terrence Southern. We are embarking on a journey into the dynamic realm of innovation through the eyes of today's coolest blurs. But before we dive into the episode, I got to show off my blurred off kicks. Shout out to Annie V Artistry for the custom design shoes. These actually glow in the dark.
Confidence, yeah. It really shouldn't be no arguments, cause you're now viewing the greatest of all time, saying I can't get better.
I am excited to have Maynard Okereke, the Hip Hop M.D., an award-winning science communicator with a degree in civil engineering. Maynard has received accolades for the best streaming content and is recognized for his community efforts. You may have seen him on Netflix, Ada Twist Scientist, and the Science Channel. Join us in this captivating conversation about his journey, achievements, and the fusion of science and entertainment. Welcome to BlerdOut, Maynard.
Hey, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Man, this is exciting. So I'm just curious, how did you go about mixing hip hop and science together?
Oh man, that's a story all in itself right there. I've always been a science nerd. I grew up a science nerd. I was always into nature. Fascinating enough. I used to love exploring out like neighborhood park, catching frogs, snakes, salamanders. But at the same time too, I was always into entertainment. Like music was a thing. I grew up as a hip hop artist, making music, writing music, producing. I was in a group. We did solo work as well for a long time. And really, the hip-hop science is a culmination of literally everything I'm about, right? My love for music, my love for science and nature, and my love for educating, And it was really the culmination of all those things. And I went through a whole crazy life journey of trying to figure out the best way to express myself. And the hip-hop science platform was that full culmination, that summation of everything that I do. And from there on, it's been rolling, and it's turned into this whole educational platform that it is now.
I love that because that's just where we're trying to go with the BlerdOut movement. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do we make STEM education and STEM innovation more relatable to the things that we enjoy? And hip hop, again, one of those things that started with us. So how do we just blend in those great things?
Yep.
So tell me, where'd you grow up at, and how'd you get into the world of engineering?
Yeah, so I bounced around quite a bit. I was actually born in Austin, Texas. My dad's side is Nigerian, my mom's side is from Cameroon. And so they came to the country, they had me while they were still going to school. And they couldn't take care of me early on, and so they sent me back home to Cameroon. So I actually was raised in Cameroon, West Africa, lived there for about 4 years, and then came back to Texas for like a hot minute, quick year, and then we ended up in Vancouver, Washington. That's where I spent most of my time, Vancouver, Washington. The other Vancouver, people always think Vancouver, Canada, but Vancouver, Washington, just across the river from Portland, Oregon. And spent most of my time there. Ended up going to school in Seattle. And like I said, I grew up a nature nerd, always into wildlife. And because I actually wanted to be a wildlife biologist. That's what I actually went to University of Washington originally to explore, was a degree in wildlife biology. And it was crazy. I got into school, right? And literally everybody was like, nah, you don't want to do wildlife science. Like, there's no money in wildlife science, And I think it really triggered from, there was nobody that looked like me that wanted to be a wildlife scientist. Like, I didn't know any wildlife scientists when I was growing up, you know what I'm saying? I just had this love and this fascination for nature, and I wanted to explore what that could be. And by the time I got into UW and I started seeing other black people, right, in college that were exploring all these degrees and seeing other educated brothers and sisters, right, I ended up finding a little bit more about engineering. And I grew up also loving design. I loved, architecture and building things, right? I was a Lego nerd as well. And so that really kind of sparked interest in engineering. And from there, I did internship as a nuclear engineer for a while and ended up pursuing my degree in civil environmental engineering.
I love it. Talk about the 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
like for me, I currently live in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
Right. So you were born in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
But one other thing I like to share with you is that I actually did my African ancestry DNA test last year for the New Year, right? And learned that my ancestry is from Cameroon.
Oh,
right?
nice.
So
nice.
we'll have to talk more about that another
dope.
time, because I'm thinking about how do we take something back to the motherland, right?
Yeah.
And do some of the things that we're doing in the community.
Yeah.
So,
First step, you got to visit, man. I always tell people you always got to get back to the motherland. Like,
Yes.
I always tell people, no matter what, take a trip back to Africa.
Yes.
And just be immersed in the culture and the people. It's like even because I've been back multiple times since I left both the Cameroon and Nigeria, and I still have a lot of family that lives over there. And there's nothing like going over there and experiencing that rich culture and just kind of knowing where you came from. And even though I remember the very first time I went back to Cameroon since I had left, even though I left when I was really little, right? I still had this, I had this piece of me that knew everything. It was like deja vu. I remembered where everything was, right? I remember the kitchen. I remembered still how to navigate places. And it was really like this, like a visceral, like instinctual element of being back home. Yeah. And there's nothing like being back with the culture and your people and again, knowing those roots, you know? So go back to Cameroon if you have a chance.
I'm going back. I'm gonna call you when I go. So let's talk about like a somewhat of a touchy subject. The idea of were you considered a nerd when you're growing up? And if so, what was that experience like? And I've never really liked that word, right? Because I felt like it was a derogatory thing. But here we are kind of celebrating the black culture. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, funny. I mean, my name is Maynard. Right, and so like, if there was anybody that was gonna be growing up being called a nerd, it was me. You know, like, I always tell people I never had a good reason of my name. My parents never gave me an actual. There's no cool thing where I'd be like, that's Maynard. That just means it. It was just, I was born in May. That's all I got, you know, from Maynard. But, you know, so I grew up with that name. So there was obviously, thinking about 5th, 6th grade, people always make fun. It started out Maynard and then ended up being, you know, Mustard. And, kids run with whatever stuff. But yeah, I always consider nerd, right? Because I told you, I had this love for nature and I had this love for learning and just education in general. And I think a lot of that stemmed from my parents, having African parents. And, you know, if you've ever been around African culture, African people, right, like straight from Africa, it's like, you had no choice. You're either going to be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer. Like, that's it. Those are your only routes, you know? Right. And it comes from a good place, right? Because your parents want you to have a better life than they had growing up, you know? And I didn't really appreciate that until later on as I got into adult. Early on, like, I hated it because I was always getting pushed. School, education, learn this. I go to school, do all my projects. Then I come home, my parents would maybe do extra math projects and extra experiments and science stuff, you know? So I was like, I was always immersed into education and learning. And so for me, it was just natural, right? I went to school and I loved doing quizzes. I loved doing tests, you know, and I excelled. I did well. I was a straight A student all the way through high school, 4.0, you know, valedictorian, all that stuff, you know? So like, I had that element of education and just learning. And people always wonder, like, how do you know all this stuff? Like, how do you just know these random facts? Because I also didn't really fit the part, you know? And I was always that kid that merged with every, you know, category of student that you could possibly imagine, right? The jocks and the sports kids and you know, and the nerds. And then, you know, I'd go and hang out with the goth kids. And I was just all over the place, right? I was just fascinated by people. And I love just being tight with different groups of people and learning from different groups of people. And so people always kind of put me in that box of like, you're different. You're, you know, weird nerd. You're just, you know, you're smart, you know, all this stuff. But at the same time, you know, I was also that kid that rapped, you know what I'm saying? And so like, there was always, people never knew how to categorize me, you know, and which I didn't mind, but I didn't really appreciate that level of kind of separation until I got older, you know, because even for me internally, it still caused a divide in myself because I didn't know where I truly fit in, especially when I started, you know, pursuing career and all these different things, right? I didn't know exactly how to, like, what pot to go in. And I think that caused a lot of division in just knowing what I wanted to be as well, too.
Man, you were so inspiring. But I must ask, like, so do you have a rap album?
I do. I do. I put out multiple different projects, mixtape projects, all that full spectrum. I was in the group originally called Altered States of Consciousness, ASC, with my boy Joe and Nassan. And we started that group back in like literally elementary school, you know? Like we literally tried. I remember we tried it out, funny, it's Black History Month. So we tried out for this like talent competition at our school at the time. And it was 3 of us in our group, my boy Richard, me, and Joe. And I wrote this song about MLK, right? And at that time, we thought it was dope. I was like, they're gonna go crazy when they hear this song. And we're like in 6th grade or something like that at the time, you know. And I remember trying out for this talent show, and I was like at an all-white, you know, school, right, you know what I'm saying? Like, we were like the only 3 brothers that were at this school, you know? And so, but we were thinking about that concept. We're like, oh, this is dope. We're going to rap this song. And we tried out for this competition. Everybody's like, oh, y'all going to get it in here. And I'm looking back, I remember like performing in front of this, like, you know, it was like 3 older white ladies in school. Sure. And in our head, we're like, oh, we're getting in. And then, you know, we didn't get into the talent show. But that kind of started our whole kind of trajectory into music and performing arts. And so I did work in that group and then eventually as a solo artist as well, too. So, yeah, I did the whole full spectrum spectrum in
Yeah,
music.
you went way further than I did, because I just rapped in my college dorm at Tennessee State, made a whole bunch of noise, woke my RAs up and things like that, and acted like we weren't doing it. So I actually still have the cassette tapes. Yeah, that just shows how far back I go.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm an old school rapper.
We'll have to pull it out sometime and do a little listen through.
I'm ready. Let's make it happen. We're gonna make the BlerdOut song.
Yeah.
So how about this? I noticed on social media that you coined yourself as the Bill Nye of World Star.
Yeah, Bill Nye meets World Star.
Okay, Bill Nye meets World Star.
Yeah, that's a tagline that I have in like my bio on most of my social platforms. And it was funny because like originally when I started that platform, it completely didn't go the direction that I was thinking, right? Hip Hop Signs really started out as a sketch idea, right? Like I'd left engineering, moved down to LA to pursue music and entertainment work. And while I was acting and trying to figure out, hey, how do I find someone that like truly defines me? How do I separate myself from all the other actors and musicians and artists that are out here, you know? And I started thinking creatively about, okay, how can I develop some funny sketch or something that could really showcase who I was? And I remember people would always say I was the guy that just drop random science facts in like inappropriate situations, you know? So I kind of ran with it. I remember I was in my boy's place one day and we're listening to, I think it was a Rick Ross song. And there was a line in there where he was like, I live next to Oprah, you ain't even know it. It's from this like, you ain't even know it song, right? Okay. And I remember sitting there, I was waiting for my friend to get ready and I was like, live next to Oprah. And now this is how my mind works, right? I'm like, okay, Rick Ross, Oprah's a billionaire, right? How much money does Rick Ross have to make in order to have a house next to Oprah, you know? And so like, my mind always goes down this crazy wormhole. And from there, I started like doing these kind of debunking of different song lyrics, right? Where I'd break down whether it was fact or fiction, you know, from just different lines. You know, hip hop's all about crazy, outlandish bars, you know? Yeah. And so that's how the Hip Hop Science platform started, which is this random sketch idea, and then eventually snowballed into this whole educational platform. But that's really how it started. And so when people would ask like, oh, what is this, or what is this character, right? I grew up as a Bill Nye fan, loving Bill Nye growing up, but then also as a hip hop junkie as well too. I was like, okay, what worlds does this actually fit into? And I was like, oh, that's like Bill Nye meets like the ratchetness of World Star, you know? Because I'd break down like crazy, weird music lyrics or like fight videos or, you know, just crazy things that would happen in our culture that we'd always like, you know, laugh about or just watch from an entertainment perspective. But then I was like, oh, how do we mix in science into this? And how do we actually learn something from this thing that we're just being entertained by? How do we pull some knowledge from it? And so Bill Nye meets World Star was that fusion and just kind of ran from there.
I love how you've, collided those worlds together. Mm-hmm. But tell me, how has that impacted the community that you serve, and what has it meant to the minorities and the youth in the community?
Yeah, I think that aspect is really important. And like I said, when I started, I just started out this sketch idea. I didn't really have this long-term, broader scope vision of this platform being something in terms of STEM outreach and representation and diversity in STEM and all this that I do now. But I quickly learned that when I was doing this content, like people were learning things from it, right? Like people would actually reach out to me and be like, I didn't know that fact. Like, this is cool. I learned from that. And from there, I realized like this is a perfect opportunity to educate people in these forums that we already live in, that we already bring our culture and our true selves to. How do we now educate people through this lane, through this vessel, right? And I always think about how I wish I was taught things in school, because my curiosity kept me involved in education. I could have been like hundreds, thousands of other students that left school, dropped out because it just didn't feel like it was for them. It didn't fit them, My curiosity kept me in it. But I didn't have like teachers that were like super passionate, that really showcased like, hey, this is why you need to be in this field. This is the opportunities that can open up for you. This is the way to get hands-on and experiment and learn. Like I had to figure all that stuff out myself. And I wish like I had a teacher, educator that spoke to me in a way that I could understand, right? That connected to me at the core of who I was, you know what I'm saying? As a black person into hip hop, into culture and fashion and all these different things that blended these things that I did on a daily basis with science. And so when I started doing this hip hop science platform and I started seeing people were learning from it, I realized this is a perfect opportunity to engage and educate our community, reach them where we're already at. We're already consuming these media, right? On social media, TikTok videos, all these different things, crazy videos on World Star and all these different things. How do we now bring this educational element to it? And so much like what you do here for the BlerdOut podcast, right? It's like representation is showcasing more of us, right? Showcasing the wide range of perspectives that we bring to the table. You know what I'm saying? We're not just a monolithic, one type of people, one type of culture. There's so many different backgrounds and so many different things that shape who we are, and I think it's so important to be able to bring that on the educational side. And that's really what is growing into, providing representation in STEM, diversity in STEM, showcasing the importance, showcasing the value that we bring to the table and the enrichment that we bring to different companies, whether it's on the tech side, biology, wildlife, space exploration, whatever it is. How do we bring our culture to that? And how do we kind of merge those worlds? And how do we now uplift that next generation that's behind us to spark that curiosity and excitement to keep them engaged in these fields as well?
Man, I am so inspired by you, man, just listening to you, and I know that journey all too well. I mean, the very thing that you're speaking to is the reason why we started the BlerdOut movement, and how do we navigate and go forward faster, right?
Yeah.
Because the same experience I had, you had, and somebody else out there is having. So I'm sure that the work that we're doing is actually going to magnify and go further. So let's talk a little bit about hip hop, right? It's 2024. It's a lot different than what we saw when we grew up.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
I mean, I remember when Young MTV Raps debuted in 1988, and I was excited. But let me ask you, who's your favorite hip hop artist?
Oh man, we're gonna go to top hip hop artists. Actually, this one is easy for me. I'm a Nas fan. Okay. All time best MC, best because I think whenever it comes to best hip hop artists, there's always got to be a criteria, right, of what makes the best. I think longevity has got to be in there, right? Your discography, right, of what you bring to the table, and your impact on the culture. And Nas checks all those boxes on everything. And I've been a big fan since the beginning, and to this day, he's still putting out dope projects. You know what I'm saying? And the combination of lyricism, the combination of production, everything that he brings to the table, the aura, what he's meant for the culture, it's hands down for me. It's got to be Nas.
Yeah, my favorite artist is Fonte from Little Brother.
Oh, okay,
so I'm a Fonte
okay.
fan.
Yeah.
I can tell that a lot of new artists steal his style, right? They borrow his style. I've heard so many different artists kind of like, it sounds a little like Fonte.
Yeah.
They don't have his, his language, but they're definitely one of my favorite artists.
Nice.
So which artist would you consider more like yourself as a Blur? Like, would that be Nas as well, or somebody else who kind of speaks to the knowledge base that you're carrying out to the community?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think Nas still definitely fits within that blurred element, but like when I think of like blurred as far as hip hop, I'm also a big Wu-Tang fan, right? And I'd put Wu-Tang, they're a group obviously, so like they don't categorize as like the best hip hop artist. But if I go with best groups of all time, Wu-Tang hands down. And the whole Wu-Tang squad are Blurs. Like
That's
literally
true,
the whole. I mean, you think about the whole foundation of Wu-Tang, right? I mean, it's based out of old. It's based out of old like Wu videos, right? Like this is the whole style, everything that they embody. Comes from a blurred perspective. It's like, who else would do that? Who else would take this different culture that has no element in black culture or black representation whatsoever and take it and make it theirs, right? And they did that, And you look at like Jizza, you look at Master Killer, Ghostface, you know what I'm saying? And the terminology, the words that they use, the wordplay. Like I feel my introduction in science came from Wu-Tang. Listen to Wu-Tang songs. Like that's where I fell in love with science, was listening to those lyrics, you know what I'm saying? Bomb atomically, Socrates' philosophy is not, it's like everything they spit is science. You know what I'm saying? Like everything they spit is science,
Yes.
And knowledge is power, you know what I'm saying? All that, the whole mantra, everything that exude and bring to the table. And so, yeah, I gotta say hands down, you just look at the whole Wu-Tang group and the affiliates, the whole group of Wu-Tang are Blurs.
The whole entire crew. Well, there you go. One for the Blurs called Wu-Tang. I mean, I love it. That's a good one. I mean, and you even started spitting for us, so I mean, that's special. So again, you've collaborated with a lot of high-profile organizations, brands, institutions. You mind shedding some light and share with us about what those collaborations were like and what was the impact?
Yeah. No, that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed the most about this platform is I always try to take time to just look back and just appreciate the growth, because a lot of times we work, we're always grinding and we're in the moment, right, and we're thinking, we're not doing enough, there's more to do, and I'm always that, right, I'm always on to the next thing. And so I've been trying to do better at just kind of settling in and just kind of looking at the trajectory and like all the things I've been able to do. And it's been a blessing, man. It's been a blessing from where this platform started out. As I said, a sketch idea, to now working with, some of the biggest tech companies in the world. I just came back from CES 2024 this year, just a couple weeks ago, doing a project with 3M, you know what I'm saying? And literally 3M, Scotch tape, Post-it notes, that 3M, right? That has hands in literally every facet of material science and physical science, any device that you could possibly use. There's a 3M element in it, And so having a partnership, being an ambassador for them and showcasing some of the new technologies that they just launched at this last CES, absolutely phenomenal. I've done some work with Microsoft as well too. Blue Origin, doing an event with space exploration event that with some of their students that they brought out for a symposium. And just kind of that whole full spectrum of all these different threads, right? Wildlife organizations. I'm on the board right now for this program called Reserva Youth Land Trust, and we're helping preserve a plot of land in Ecuador. And as a rainforest lover and a nature lover, conservation is a big part of what I do and love, and that program inspires and encourages and empowers youth to be involved in conservation efforts, and so supporting that organization has been absolutely amazing. And so it's been a blessing, man, just being able to see the people and places that I've been able to reach with this platform, and the people that reach out to me to say, hey, we appreciate the work that you do on not just diversity but your voice that you bring to the table, to be able to promote their brands and promote their institutions as well too. That's been absolutely phenomenal. So it's been an absolute joy being able to partner with them.
Have you also done any work with nonprofit organizations who are pushing the mission of STEM in the Black communities?
Oh yeah, 100%. There's an organization in Baltimore called STEM CX that I've done some work with, and I have so many different random affiliate brands that a lot of stuff I do pro bono too, especially if it's a dope organization that I know, hey, they're doing really legit work and they're touching youth in different ways, right? I always try to offer my services, whether it's like on consulting, whether it's advising, to be able to like find ways to be able to grow their platforms or be able to share what I do, whether that's giving them content that they can use for their classrooms or giving them content that they can use for some of their programming. So I'm always working with different organizations that specifically support STEM efforts for Black people. And a lot of the programming that I do is based around that when I talk about highlighting representation in STEM, because, I think that fits into the whole blurred element, right? Is like, why is our voice in science and technology and education, why is it important, right? We don't see many people that look like us in these fields, especially the STEM fields. And these are the highest paying jobs in the world, and we only make up a very small percentage. And then we lose so many people on a day-to-day basis. That could be the next Einsteins, That could be the next Elon Musk, right? Because they just didn't have the opportunity. They didn't have somebody that reached out to them, or a voice, or a embodiment of what they could be, somebody doing dope work in that field, And so I try to be that in a lot of the work that I do. And that's why I love touching across the full spectrum of STEM and bringing my voice to so many different elements. I did recently an ocean exploration on board Nautilus Live, and it's the Nautilus ship it's a research vessel that travels all across the world, and they do unique science research, right, from ocean mapping to discovering new organisms, right? And I've had a chance to go on 2 expeditions on board with them, and I've had students that have reached out to me because I have this presentation that I do, which is called Oceans of Possibilities, and I talk about all the unique things that we've been able to do on that ship, and the unique things that we've been able to touch, and the conservation efforts that we've been able to support. And there have been so many different students, especially Black students, that reach out and they're like, I never knew of these opportunities. I never knew that there were Black people that could go out to sea and actually explore, actually work with technology and submersibles, right? And just through the content that I've been able to share on my platforms, highlighting some of the research that we did on there, so many other students now have become educated and now have become curious about opportunities in marine science, which is another field you never see Black people in, And so I'm always proud when I'm able to touch, different minds and different voices like that in that way by sharing and showcasing some of the things that I've been able to do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I actually just connected with the organization Blacks in Marine Science.
Yep. Absolutely. I have a lot of friends that are part of that group.
Okay.
And doing it. They had an event not too long ago that I wish I could have made. Just timing didn't work out. I had another project going on at that time, but I always support them as far as promoting the work that they're doing, and that's an amazing and great program. And a lot of those programs started over the pandemic, right? Yes. When we started realizing when representation became so front and center and acknowledging and understanding that we need to support Black people in different things. We need to support Black people in outdoors, Black people in nature, Black people in astrophysics, these fields that we've been historically left out of. And so a lot of those organizations started over the pandemic when we started really feeling empowered and people really started noticing this disparity of Black and brown voices in these fields. And so those organizations are so amazing, and we just need to do better at getting that outreach out, letting people know that these platforms are there, these programs are there, and that we're out there doing this work. That's so important as well.
I mean, I tell you, after this conversation, I don't think there's going to be any problem getting all of us in the room together to figure out how we can make a bigger impact together.
Yeah, get the conglomerate started, baby. With it.
So I got another topic for you.
Yeah.
Shark Tank's one of my favorite shows to watch.
Yeah.
Right? You were on Shark Tank. What was that like for you?
Man, it was a crazy experience, man. Like, I always pride myself in being ready for every moment. You know, I work hard, I prepare, I do everything, and I don't really usually have crazy nerves. I remember even as an artist performing on stage, like you get that adrenaline rush, right? And you get anxiety a little bit, but once you're on stage, like everything just lets loose, you know, and you just go for it. And I bring that same element to everything that I do when I'm doing keynote presentations and workshops with students and everything. Like I have that kind of anxiety beforehand, but as soon as I'm on stage, I let loose. Shark Tank was the very first time I got on that stage and I was like, oh crap, like, this is what is going on? This is so intense because there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that they don't show you on the show that happens that people don't realize. You see like a 8-minute segment for a show, you know what I'm saying? They'll probably have like 4 different businesses on one episode or whatever, and it's like quick little 8 minutes of back and forth, whatever, and then you make the deal. When you're filming it, you're literally live in front of the sharks for over an hour. Wow. Just going back and forth, talking about your business, going back and forth about money, about opportunities, about yourself, where you're going. And they're just hitting you left and right with questions, bombarding you with questions to the point where you don't even have time to answer everybody. You're trying to answer one person, another shark's answering a question or asking another question. So you're bouncing all over the place. And I remember being so scattered in that moment. And I was like, we're going to lose this because I can't focus on what I need to do. Everything I had planned just went out the door. But it was an absolutely crazy experience and one of the most life-changing experiences for me just as an entrepreneur and somebody that just loves doing random things. So outside of what I do, obviously, with science communication work, I have a food business, and that's what we brought to the show, our line of seasonings. And at that time, we had just launched our plant-based chicken. Okay. And so we went on that show, and we're like, hey, we're trying to make this happen. We've been running this business for the past 4 years, just on the ground, going to different festivals and just building a buzz within like the vegan community as well, and within just food lovers. And that was our one opportunity to go land a deal that could be game-changing, and thank God we did it because it was a stressful moment.
Did get the deal?
Yeah.
All right, excellent.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, and so how did your success on the show contribute to the impact that you're making now?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, like at that time, I'd already started my hip hop science platform. So we filmed that episode back in 2020. So we were the pandemic season, which was crazy. Like a unforgettable season. It was completely different than they'd done for any show. We filmed that in August of 2020. And we know what was going on in August of 2020. Like nothing. Everything was shut down. So they had us posted up in the Venetian there and doing that episode. And then the episode aired in like November of that year. But doing that show aided literally in everything that I do now with my platform, right? Because, you know, entrepreneurialism, I think, is also key when we talk about STEM education, right? How do we advocate for ourselves? And so having that business side, I'm also able to bring that to the table, you know, because so many people doing work in STEM start their own businesses and go in so many different trajectories. And so being able to bring that element, I think, is key. And having that foundational element is also key. But just the versatility of being able to showcase to people the wide range of things that we can do and not limit ourselves, you know? Like, I think so many of us grow up with this mindset that there's a glass ceiling and that we can only go so far, right? You think about the rich billionaires and you're like, I can never be that. Or you think about other successful entrepreneurs and you're like, oh, I'm only gonna make it such far, you know? And I think kind of blowing that out the door and showcasing that we can do whatever we want. You know, I can go on a wildlife exploration and can be communicating science topics on social media in this weird, quirky way, right? With my headphones and lab coat on. And the next minute, I could be doing a business deal with, with Barbara Cochran. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
like the wide range of different things that we are able to bring to the table, and not to be stereotyped, and not be put into one box. Like if I could go back and look at myself in 6th grade riding, the MLK line, like to where I'd be now doing this work, and then having my history in music and entertainment and acting, and being a struggling actor here in LA and going through that whole grind, and being a starving artist and just trying to get my music heard, to now being able to do all these wide range of different things, and still bringing my true authentic self to the table. I mean, I think that's so important when we think about STEM education and STEM outreach, and really getting more of our voices in these fields.
So your mission of your program is to change the stereotype of what a scientist looks like.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like, how have you actively been working towards that, and what's that experience been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's literally everything every day with the videos that I do. Not in the videos that I make, the stories that I share, and the life that I lead, right? Like most people, I walk into a room, you're not going to think that I'm the scientist in the room, right? And just because I'm dressed like this, most of the time you'll see me, it just dressed in the culture, you know what I'm saying? Like just doing me, And I think I grew up, especially, I remember going and doing my first job that I worked as a nuclear engineer, right? And that was an internship that I did in college. And I was working at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, and my task on that internship was to develop new tools to help dissect the hulls in the nuclear submarines when they came back to the shipyard. And I remember I used to take the ferry going there every morning. And I remember I was at the ferry one time, and this lady asked me, like, "Oh, what do you do at the shipyard?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a nuclear engineer." And she looked at me like I was absolutely crazy, like I just literally spit in her face. Like it was the most unbelievable, ridiculous thing I could have ever said. I still, to this day, it's stuck with me for so long. I remember the look on her face of just like, yeah, there's no way you could possibly be a nuclear engineer, right? Because I didn't fit the mold for nuclear engineer. You know what I'm saying? Like I was in college, I was sweats, just chill, kind of oversized, baggy cap. Like I didn't fit that look for what a scientist looks like. And that moment really stuck with me because that look on her face, and I'd experienced different things like that throughout my life, especially in college, of people stereotyping me because I didn't really fit the part. I didn't look like that, Right. And it stuck with me. And from that moment, that was literally the last time I told people that I was doing a nuclear engineering internship, because I didn't want people to look at me like that, or have that look of disgust or unbelief, or now have to explain myself. Look, I'm doing this, I go to school. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to have to prove myself to people every single time. And so that and other little moments kind of pushed me away from really being able to bring my authentic self to the table. And so when I think about kind of changing that narrative, I think for all of us, it's so important, because that, even though it seems so simple, right? Like, oh, clothing, like whatever, that shouldn't be a big deal, or style, whatever. It is a big deal. I mean, you start off this podcast bringing attention to your shoes, right? Like, right. And we're on a BlerdOut podcast with Hip Hop M.D. talking about science and STEM education. There's so many important things that are true to who we are, that we need to embrace, that are important. And if you take that away from us, it strips us down. Right? When you get stripped down, you get stripped naked, and you're bare, you don't want to be seen, and that takes so many of us away from doing amazing work in STEM. And that's why I say we lose the next Einsteins, right? We lose the next Oppenheimers, that could be like us, that look like us, doing incredible work, because they just didn't fit into that mold. Somebody looked at them and defined them already and said, you don't belong. Right. Or they didn't see representation, somebody that looked like them, right? And so changing that narrative is so important. And that's not just me that's doing that. There's a whole, group of psychomers that are out here doing work, in STEM. I have so many different partners that I work with, and so many different peers that I work with that are doing such dope work of like, okay, this is what a scientist looks like, and that mantra rings so true, because we've all experienced that racism. We've all experienced being pushed out of academia because we didn't fit the mold, we didn't fit the stereotype, and we don't want to be boxed in. And that's the thing I think it's important for our culture. Like, we're very prideful people, right? Like, we bring something to the table, like we want to be respected for what we bring to the table, and we know our worth, And if we get pushed out of that's so limiting for all the possibilities of things that we can do as far as changing technology and changing the kind of forefront of where the world is going. So changing that narrative, I think, is so important for all of us, Black and brown voices, to be able to really shape and define our place in STEM.
Black robotics engineer, black nuclear engineer together having this conversation. It's so important that we break the stereotypes that we've just become accustomed to. I too share the sentiment that you shared. I remember when it was like for me in my engineering role, and I was told things like, well, you're from Detroit, like you must be from the other side of 8 Mile, right? There's no way that you're from that side of 8 Mile. Like it's just not possible that you're a robot engineer. And for me, it wasn't until I got in front of kids that I started to value that you and I, we're superheroes in the world, right? And that's how, we're with the athletes and the entertainers in the black world, the ones who don't get enough press and get to be seen, right? And that's exactly what we need to do. So I love what you're doing right now, and I'm hoping that we continue to work on things like this so we can just make a bigger impact, right? Because there's not a bunch of engineers having this conversation with one another right now, but we should, right? We should have a bunch of cameras around us and see what that conversation turns into and how we can, uplift the youth that's coming behind us so that those kind of things won't happen. Because, like you said, I get into rooms and it's like I'm the only one, right? And that continues to be frightening. After 25 years, it's like, here we go again, right? Where even, looking back at all the accomplishments, you still get questioned for your capability to do something. And that's just not right. But we got to get stronger and break those stereotypes.
100%.
So the mission of the BlerdOut is to turn the STEM into a vibrant experience. How does that representation align with your mission?
Yeah, I mean, I literally think everything that we've talked about thus far, I think is part of that mission. Think about it, right? You talk about BlerdOut and black nerds, right? And what we bring to the table, and I talked about earlier, showcasing our facet sides, of all these different things that we are able to bring to the table, this wide spectrum of skill sets that we have. And when we talk about representation in STEM, that's literally it. It's like, how do we showcase our voices? How do we showcase who we are and highlight that in a new and authentic way? And when we think about science and we think about technology, I could tell when you talk about I'm a robotics engineer, how proud you are of that.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's a passion of yours. You love doing it. Whether you're getting paid for it or not, like you'd probably be doing something in robotics engineer, designing something. And you talked about working with kids and uplifting that next generation. It's like that passion of being so entranced into what it is that you do and loving it, right? That is itself is blerdism, right? That's what we're about, is being so involved and so passionate about this field, this area of study, this research or whatever, where you don't typically see people that look like us. Like, that's why it's so important, Like, if everybody was just doing it, right? Like, you're not seeing a white nerd group, right? You're not seeing because there's an element of appreciation when there's not representation in that area. When you have a community where a low percentage of us are involved in STEM. And so for me, doing the work that I do is all about that on a daily basis. I always infuse an element of representation. I always infuse an element of getting more of us in these fields because and I always compare it to nature, right? A biodiverse ecosystem are the most thriving ecosystems because you have so many different elements that bring something unique, a foundational element to that food cycle, to that food chain, what I'm saying, from phytoplankton to the carnivores, right? And the plants, vegetation, all of those contribute to the health of an ecosystem. And when you take one of those elements out, that ecosystem doesn't fare well. And it's the same thing when we talk about STEM education and careers in STEM. When we lose people that look like us in these fields, those fields don't grow. They're not fruitful, right? And I think more and more people are realizing that. It's like we bring so many unique things to the table, cultural perspectives to the table, and those elements shape and they grow the trajectory of where these businesses, where this technology, where this innovation can go. Because you don't have innovation without diversity. Right. You don't have innovation without unique people bringing something different to the table, changing and asking questions from a different perspective, from a different mindset. Like, that's what innovation, that's what true innovation is. And if we don't have us, if we don't have blurs in the mix, if you don't have people that are passionate of showcasing what they love and bringing joy and authenticism to the table, right? Those fields don't grow. They don't attribute to anything that's bountiful. And so everything that I do, my platform, I think that's why I was like, hey, when you guys invited me to be a part of this, I was like, this is so fitting because I'm a blurred in every and true sense. I mean, I got a NASA shirt and a Park Hill hat. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing more blurred than that. You know, talk about the mix of science and entertainment and hip hop, right? It's like that's it. You know what I'm saying? And like I try to bring my true self to the table in everything that I do, and I try to inspire others to do that as well. And so I'm absolutely happy and honored to be a part of this and being able to hopefully continue to bring that narrative as well too with what you guys are doing on my platform and getting blurs to unite.
Yes,
you know
sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, let's do that. I mean, you are every bit of what this mission and movement was meant to be. So I'm really excited about the conversation we had. I will tell you, initially, you know, I was at the premise of, okay, well, black nerd. I said, you know, it's a little bit bigger than that, right? You know, how about we blur out the stigma that it's not cool to be smart? Like, is it cool to be dumb now? Like, what are we trying to say when we're like, all right, well, you're a nerd or you're a blurred, right? So our goal was to, how do we make cool and intelligence align with one another, exactly the very things that you're doing. So how do you see the BlerdOut movement contributing and transforming stereotypes to make STEM more appealing to our very people, like you were speaking to? You know, the marketing and the products don't move without our involvement. But we haven't monetized those opportunities either, right? We've invented a lot of things, and we don't own any of those inventions. So can you speak to that? Like, how do we transform that and make a mark going forward?
Yeah. Well, I think you hit on something key, right? Because it's like, oh, we're showcasing blurs, right? And it's cool to be smart. It's cool to be educated. Which doesn't mean vice versa that, we got to transform, like it being dumb is like people always think of us as dumb. And that's not really, when you talk about blurs, that's really not the foundation, right? We didn't say, being smart is cool because people just thought that we were stupid necessarily, right? But it's an element of belonging. It's an element of feeling like you're a part of the future, you know? And I think that's the key that we need to really hone in on is like, okay, we're smart, we're educated, and we're showcasing how dope this is because we want more of us to continue to do it. We don't want people being left out or people feeling like they can't be included in these groups or in these discussions with entrepreneurs, with other scientists, with PhDs. You know, like we want our culture to fit into these fields, you know? And so when we think about kind of shaping the future and changing the future and bringing us more of us in, like this is how we do it, by bringing this to the table, right? In all these different forms and all these different platforms, uniting our voices to be able to showcase what we can do, the abilities that we have.
Yes.
And so that's why we always talk about representation is key and knowledge is power, right? And having having people that look like us doing this work, because that's how we uplift our communities, you know? And so that's literally the trajectory of everything that I want to do with the platform. Like I always told people when I started the Hip Hop Science, my goal is to bring this to a national audience. I wanted a TV show, right? Like I said, I grew up watching Bill Nye. And what did Bill Nye have? Bill Nye had a TV show to the masses that to this day, kids still know of Bill Nye, you know, because of their parents or old video, whatever. It's like culturally, it's still relevant because for the longest time, that was really the only example of a scientist on TV making science cool that we ever saw. You know, and if you think about it realistically, we haven't really had any voices since then between Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Two of the most famous science communicators our world has ever seen, right? Outside of that, who can we really say has brought science to the masses, to the forefront in a unique way, you know? And obviously now we have people that do amazing work on YouTube. Veritasium, a good friend of mine, does amazing work on YouTube. You see Mark Rober, all these people, right? But these are white individuals, right? Yes. These aren't people that look like me and you know? And so my focus has always been, how do we take that mantra of like, science is cool, science is dope, and showcase that to our community? How do we not bridge that gap between music, entertainment, and science? And that's really everything that hip hop science embodies, is being able to bridge that gap, being able to showcase that these fields aren't mutually exclusive, that all these pertain to each other. They have elements to each other. There's scientific elements to everything that you do, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, making decisions, from the foods you eat. You're actually actively participating in scientific demonstrations and engagements in every single thing that you do. Right. And when we bring that to the table and we kind of hit that mindset into students, and we kind of engrave that into students, that's so transformative and opens the doors for the possibilities of things that it can do. And so I think that's so important for that movement is, how do we now bring this to the masses? How do we now build the momentum to where we can get more of us into these fields and highlight that representation? And so that the next generation coming up is like, oh yeah, this science is cool, not because like, oh, it's, we already know science is cool. Intrinsically, we all know science is cool, but we don't know, and not enough of us are invested in it to really be able to realize the opportunities that could actually do for us and the places that could actually take us. And so the more we're able to showcase that, the better. And so that's what I try to do every day right now with this platform.
I love it. So I'm of the mindset that community starts at home. Mm-hmm. I noticed that you're a girl dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a girl dad.
Nice.
Like, what has it meant for you to be a girl dad, as and what you bring to the community?
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's funny because somebody commented recently on a post that I had with my daughter, and they're like, we need to step away from this mantra of like girl dad or boy mom or whatever. Like, they're trying to go on that whole tip of like, we got to separate ourselves from trying to put these stigmas onto these. But I think that thing showcasing that is so important, especially like girl dads. I can speak from this point as a girl dad, is that connection, that bond that you have with a child of the opposite sex is really unique, right? And it's foundational. And I think there's an element of race when it comes involved in that with Black girl dads, because historically we've always been seen as people that are involved with our kids, right? People that aren't there for our families, and having kids out of wedlock and not taking care of your families and all these different things. There's a stereotype that goes along with that within us. And I think breaking those stereotypes is important, but more so with me and my daughter, and being a science nerd, like being able to now teach and educate my daughter. I teach and educate kids all the time in workshops, K through 12, adults, everything. But to now have child that belongs to me, that looks like me, that came from me, being able to now implore what I know and what I love and put that on her and pass down to her. If she loves it, it's not like my daughter has to grow up into a scientist, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want my daughter to grow up knowing that she can do anything that she wants to do, yes. That she has any door open to her, and that she can't be boxed into anything. Like, that's what I'm here to showcase her. My job isn't to turn her into a scientist. My job is to showcase all the possibilities of things that she can do. And so for me, that's so transformative now with the knowledge that I have and the different things that I've been able to go through in my career and my trajectory that led me here, to be able to pass that knowledge on to her so that she can build on that. Like that, there's nothing better than leaving that legacy. And so I love it every day, man. It's an absolute joy. I wake up seeing her face, and it puts a smile on my face, and I'm motivated and ready to go throughout the day, like it's weird, you never think you could love something that much until you have it, and then you're like, how did I go on without this, and so it's absolutely amazing, and I treasure every moment that I have with her to be able to pass on any bit of knowledge that I have.
All right. So in closing, thank you so much for coming on to the BlerdOut podcast today.
Yeah,
I enjoyed this conversation. I hope it continues thereafter.
Absolutely.
I just want to tell our audience again, thank you, the hip hop scientists, for coming on, and tell our audience how they can find you and how they may be able to follow you.
Yeah. You can find me at Hip Hop Science Show on all platforms. My website, hiphopscienceshow.com. Instagram, I'm super active on, so you can find me there at Hip Hop Science Show. TikTok, you can find all my crazy videos that I do on TikTok as well. YouTube, I'm getting back on my YouTube videos this year. Okay. I'm posting shorts and stuff, but I had a good streak going on of really long form science content that I really love and appreciate, and hopefully I'm going to have some time to kind of get back and start building up kind of a new element of that. And look out for a book coming up soon as well too. I'm working on a kid's book that hopefully will be coming out end of the year, and so I'm definitely happy about that, to be able to get more of us involved in STEM and showcasing representation in STEM. Absolutely critical. So
I'm gonna be one of the first to buy it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for watching the show.
Confidence, it really shouldn't be no arguments, 'cause you're now viewing the greatest of all time.